Your soulmate was caught last night. Who were they with? My beloved child, something happened last night that could completely change the way you see your soulmate. Someone saw them when they were not expecting to be seen, and suddenly the question began spreading. Who were they with? Where were they going? And why did they seem so different from the person you know? But before you let your imagination decide the answer, stay with me, because the first detail may completely change what this story appears to be about. Your soulmate may have been caught in a moment that looked suspicious from a distance, yet the truth behind that moment could be far more emotional than anyone expected. Someone may have noticed them leaving somewhere late, standing beside a person you do not recognize, or having a conversation that immediately raised questions. Then came the detail that made everything even more confusing. They seemed to be protecting something. Don't skip, because the person they were with may not be who you think. At first, the story may sound simple. Your soulmate was seen last night, and someone else was there. But then the details began changing. The person who witnessed them may have noticed that your soulmate was not behaving romantically or casually. They looked serious, focused, emotionally overwhelmed. Perhaps they were listening to someone who appeared to need their attention, or perhaps they were discussing something personal that they did not want everyone around them to hear. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, your soulmate left. No dramatic scene. No explanation. Just one strange encounter that left everyone wondering what had actually happened. Stay till the end, because there is one detail about that person that could completely reverse your first impression. Something huge is waiting for you, and the answer may have nothing to do with betrayal or another romantic connection. But here is where the mystery truly begins. Your soulmate may have known that someone could see them, yet they still chose to stay there. Why? If they were hiding something, why remain in that place? If the situation was completely innocent, why did they look so emotionally serious? And most importantly, why did they apparently leave with something heavy on their mind? There may be a story behind that meeting that your soulmate has never explained to you, not because they wanted to deceive you, but because they did not know how to bring it up. Perhaps the person beside them was connected to something from their past, a family matter, an old responsibility, or information that directly involved you. Don't skip. Because the question, who were they with, may only be the surface. The real question is, why were they with that person in the first place? And the answer may reveal something your soulmate never expected you to discover. The identity of that person may be the first thing that changes everything. Your soulmate was not simply standing beside a stranger. There may have been a reason they knew each other, and that reason could reach much further back than last night. Perhaps this person had information your soulmate needed, or perhaps they were connected to a chapter of your soulmate's life that you had never heard the complete story about. When someone later asked who they were with, your soulmate may have become unusually careful with their answer. Not because the meeting was romantic, but because explaining it would require explaining everything surrounding it. And that may be exactly what they were not ready to do. Don't skip, because the moment your soulmate finally decides to explain the meeting, one detail may immediately make you realize that what looked suspicious from the outside was actually connected to something much more personal. Think about what happens when someone is caught in an unexpected situation and realizes other people have already formed their own conclusions. Your soulmate may have noticed the questions coming before anyone even asked them. Maybe they became quieter than usual. Maybe they avoided giving a full explanation. Maybe they simply said, "It's complicated," because the real story could not fit into one sentence. And that phrase may have created even more curiosity. What could possibly be so complicated? Why were they meeting this person at night? Why did the conversation seem so serious? Why did your soulmate leave looking emotionally different? Then someone may have discovered one small piece of information that changed the entire picture. The person they were with may have been connected to something your soulmate had been trying to resolve for a long time. Suddenly, last night was no longer just about where they were. It was about what they were trying to understand, finish, or finally bring into the open. Stay till the end, because there is another detail that could make you rethink the entire situation. And here is the part you should listen to carefully. Your soulmate may have been carrying this situation alone because they were trying to protect your peace. They may have thought that telling you before they understood everything would only create unnecessary confusion. So they waited. They tried to handle it privately. They believed that once they had the complete truth, they could explain everything clearly. But now someone saw them, questions started forming, and suddenly the secret became harder to keep private. Something huge is waiting ahead, because the person they were with may have said something last night that your soulmate never expected to hear. A sentence. A name. A piece of information from the past. And when your soulmate heard it, their entire expression may have changed. That is the moment the story takes its biggest turn, because what they discovered may have had something to do with you. The moment your name entered that conversation, everything may have changed. Your soulmate may have been listening to that person explain something from the past when suddenly they heard information connected directly to you. Perhaps it was a detail about a conversation you once had, a situation you thought had already been forgotten, or something someone had been keeping from you. Your soulmate may have gone completely quiet because they realized the meeting was no longer simply about their own past. Somehow, you had become part of the conversation. And that could explain why they looked so serious when someone noticed them. They were not simply meeting another person, they may have been hearing something that forced them to reconsider what they believed about you, themselves, or the connection between you. Don't skip, because the next revelation may explain why your soulmate never told you about this meeting immediately. Maybe the person beside them knew something your soulmate did not. They may have mentioned your name unexpectedly and then revealed that they had seen you, spoken to you, or heard something about you recently. Your soulmate may have started asking questions rapidly. When? Where? What did they say? And suddenly, the person who was supposed to be explaining something became the one answering questions. Your soulmate may have been trying to piece together a story that had been incomplete for a long time. Perhaps they discovered that something they believed about your feelings was not actually true. Maybe they learned that you had been waiting for clarity too, or that you had misunderstood something they did in the past. One small revelation could have made them realize that both of you may have been operating on assumptions instead of honest communication. Stay till the end, because the most surprising part may be what your soulmate decided to do after hearing your name. They could have simply walked away and kept the information to themselves. Instead, they may have stayed and asked one final question: why are you telling me this now? That question could have opened an entirely different conversation. The person may have explained that they had waited because they did not want to interfere, but circumstances had finally made silence feel impossible. Perhaps they had been carrying information that they believed your soulmate deserved to know before making any decision about the relationship. And suddenly, your soulmate may have understood why this meeting happened at this particular time. Something huge is waiting ahead, because the person they were with may not have been someone your soulmate was secretly choosing over you at all. They may have been someone holding a missing piece of your story. Someone who knew something your soulmate had never been told. And what they revealed next may have been the reason your soulmate left that place with only one thought repeating in their mind: I need to talk to them. The moment your soulmate decided they needed to speak with you, the entire meaning of last night shifted. Until then, they had been listening, questioning, and trying to understand what this person was telling them. But now their mind was fixed on one thing: you. They may have replayed old conversations, remembered moments they once misunderstood, and wondered whether you had been carrying questions of your own. Perhaps they suddenly realized that something they thought was settled between you was never actually settled at all. And that realization can be powerful, because sometimes one new piece of information forces someone to revisit an entire chapter of their life. Your soulmate may have looked at their phone more than once, considered contacting you, typed something, and then stopped. They may have wanted to explain everything immediately, but they knew a rushed message could never contain the full story. Don't skip, because the next thing they discovered may be the reason they hesitated before contacting you. The person they were with may have finally told them something that made their expression change completely. They had misunderstood your actions. Perhaps your soulmate once believed you had chosen distance, when in reality you were waiting for them to communicate. Maybe they thought you were uninterested because of something you said, while you had actually been protecting your own feelings. Or perhaps a third person had unintentionally created confusion between you by passing along incomplete information. Suddenly, your soulmate may have realized that an entire emotional story had been built around assumptions. They may have looked back at every moment between you and thought, what if I had simply asked? That question can hit hard because there is no way to know how differently things might have unfolded. But instead of staying trapped in regret, your soulmate may have decided that the only way forward was honesty. Something huge is waiting ahead, because the conversation they had last night may have given them something they had been missing for a long time, the courage to finally ask you directly. And here is the part that could surprise you most. Your soulmate may not have been planning to tell you everything they learned immediately. They may first want to verify the facts, understand the full story, and make sure they are not acting on another person's version of events. That restraint matters. They may care enough about you to avoid rushing into conclusions. But there is one thing they may already know: they cannot keep pretending that nothing has changed. The person they were with last night may have unknowingly opened a door that your soulmate had kept closed for a very long time. Now your soulmate may be preparing for a conversation where they finally ask you what they should have asked much earlier. Stay till the end, because that question could expose the real reason they were with that person, and it may be completely different from what anyone assumed. The question your soulmate may finally ask you could be incredibly simple: why didn't you ever tell me? Not why you stayed quiet last night, not why you were distant, but why neither of you ever said what you actually felt when the opportunity was there. After hearing everything from that person, your soulmate may have realized that both of you could have been carrying separate versions of the same misunderstanding. They may have believed you had moved on. You may have believed they had chosen a different path. And somewhere between those assumptions, something important remained unspoken. That is why the meeting last night may have affected them so deeply. It did not simply reveal information. It challenged a story they had been telling themselves about you. They may have spent hours thinking about whether they should reach out, whether you would believe them, and whether explaining everything now would be too late. But one thought could have kept returning: I need to hear the truth from them. Don't skip, because the answer they are looking for may be connected to something you said or did long ago. Perhaps your soulmate remembers a particular moment when they thought you were no longer interested. Maybe they noticed you becoming quieter and interpreted it as emotional distance. Maybe you stopped reaching out because you were waiting for them to show effort, while they interpreted your silence as a decision to move away. Neither person may have realized how easily one unanswered message can become a month of uncertainty, and 1 month can become an entire story built without confirmation. Then last night, someone may have revealed something that made your soulmate question that entire interpretation. Perhaps they learned that you had once asked about them too. Maybe they discovered that you had wondered where the connection was going. Or maybe they heard a completely different version of an event they had remembered for years. Suddenly, your soulmate may have understood that the two of you were not necessarily walking away from each other. You may simply have been waiting for clarity from opposite sides. Stay till the end, because the next revelation could explain exactly what made them decide that waiting was no longer enough. And then your soulmate may have made a decision. They would rather hear an uncomfortable truth from you than continue living inside an assumption. That does not mean they know what you will say. They may still feel uncertain. They may still wonder whether your feelings have changed. But something inside them has shifted. They are no longer satisfied with guessing what you meant. They want an honest conversation. They may reach out with a simple message, ask to meet, or find a natural opportunity to speak face to face. And when that conversation happens, they may begin with the very thing that has been sitting on their mind since last night. There is something I heard, and I need to ask you about it. Something huge is waiting ahead, because what they heard may connect directly to a moment you thought nobody remembered, and once your soulmate tells you what they discovered, you may finally understand why they were with that person last night. The conversation may begin with a sentence you never expected to hear. Someone told me something about you last night. Your soulmate may not immediately reveal every detail, because they could be trying to understand how you will react. They may watch your face carefully, waiting to see whether you already know what they are talking about. Then they may explain where they were, who they were with, and why the meeting happened. And suddenly, the question that haunted the entire story, who were they with, has an answer. It was someone connected to a part of their life that you never fully understood. Someone who knew details about the past. Someone who had information your soulmate believed was no longer relevant. But last night, that person brought something back into the conversation that made your soulmate realize it was still affecting the present. Don't skip, because the next thing your soulmate tells you may make you understand why they looked so different afterward. They may reveal that the person they met had remembered a moment involving you, something small that you may have completely forgotten. Maybe it was a conversation where your name came up. Maybe it was something you once said about love, commitment, or the kind of relationship you wanted. Or perhaps that person had witnessed a moment between you and your soulmate that neither of you realized had been noticed. Your soulmate may listen carefully and then realize that someone else had seen a part of your connection from the outside. That could make them rethink the way they interpreted your behavior. Perhaps they had convinced themselves that you did not care because you never said enough. But now they are hearing that your actions may have communicated something completely different. And suddenly, all those confusing memories begin connecting. Stay till the end, because one specific detail may become the missing piece your soulmate has been searching for. Then comes the revelation that may make your soulmate stop completely. The person they met last night may have said that you once asked about them. Not casually. Not because you were simply curious. You may have asked because you genuinely wanted to know whether your soulmate still cared, whether they were seeing someone else, or whether there was any possibility of repairing the distance between you. Your soulmate may have heard this and realized that while they were privately wondering about you, you may have been wondering about them too. Two people may have spent all this time waiting for the other person to make the first move. And suddenly, the meeting last night becomes more than a mysterious encounter. It becomes the moment that exposed the misunderstanding. Something huge is waiting ahead, because your soulmate may now have only one question left, and this time, they may finally be brave enough to ask you directly, "Did you ever really stop caring about me?" That question may leave you completely still. Did you ever really stop caring about me? Your soulmate may not ask it casually. They may have been carrying it since the moment they left that meeting last night. They may have replayed everything they heard, wondering whether the person was telling the complete truth or only part of the story. But beneath all those questions is something much more personal. They need to know what happened inside your heart while the two of you were apart. Perhaps they have spent too long believing that your silence meant indifference. Perhaps they thought you had found someone else or simply decided that the connection was no longer worth pursuing. And now they are standing in front of you, finally asking instead of assuming. Don't skip, because the answer may reveal why your soulmate's behavior changed so dramatically after last night. Maybe you tell them that you never stopped caring. You simply stopped knowing what to do with feelings that seem to have nowhere to go. That possibility could completely change their expression. They may realize that the distance between you was not created because one person stopped feeling. It may have been created because both people were waiting for reassurance that never came. Your soulmate might confess that they had wondered about you far more often than they admitted. They may have wanted to reach out countless times but convinced themselves that you would not want to hear from them. And perhaps you had been doing the exact same thing. Suddenly, the person they were with last night becomes almost secondary to the realization happening between you now. The real discovery is not who they were standing beside, it is that the two of you may have been carrying unresolved feelings on opposite sides of the same silence. Then your soulmate may tell you why they kept the meeting private at first. They may say they were afraid you would misunderstand. They knew that being seen with someone else could look completely different from what actually happened. But they also knew they could not explain the situation until they understood it themselves. Last night, they were searching for answers. Today, they are searching for honesty. And perhaps the most emotional thing they say is this: I didn't want you to hear about me from someone else and think I had forgotten you. That sentence could reveal just how deeply your opinion still matters to them. They may not know what the future will look like, but they know they do not want another misunderstanding to decide it for them. Stay till the end, because the next revelation could be the one that finally answers the question behind the entire story. Why did this person choose to meet your soulmate last night, and why did they bring your name into that conversation? The answer may begin with something your soulmate never expected to hear: that person had not arranged the meeting to talk about themselves at all. They wanted to talk about you. Perhaps they knew that your soulmate still carried unanswered questions and believed there was something they needed to understand before making another decision about the relationship. They may have brought up an old conversation, a forgotten moment, or a piece of information that had never reached your soulmate properly. And as the story unfolded, your soulmate may have realized that the person sitting across from them knew something about your side of the story that they had never heard. Suddenly, last night was no longer mysterious because of who your soulmate was with. It was mysterious because someone had intentionally brought your name into a conversation your soulmate thought would be about something completely different. Don't skip, because the reason they did that may be the most unexpected part of this entire story. Your soulmate may have learned that you once had an opportunity to speak about them but chose not to because you did not want to expose their private feelings. Maybe someone asked you what you truly thought about your soulmate, and instead of giving a careless answer, you protected the connection by keeping your response private. That person may have remembered your words and eventually shared them with your soulmate. Imagine what that could do to someone who had spent months or years wondering whether you ever cared. Your soulmate may have been expecting to hear that you had moved on. Instead, they may have discovered that you had been careful with their name, their feelings, and the memories you shared. And perhaps that was the moment your soulmate finally understood something: your silence had never necessarily meant that you felt nothing. Sometimes silence means someone does not know whether speaking will help or make things harder. Stay till the end, because what your soulmate learned next may have made them reconsider every assumption they ever made about you. Then the person may have delivered one final piece of information: you had apparently been waiting for the same thing your soulmate had been waiting for, a clear sign that the other person still cared. That realization could hit harder than any dramatic revelation. Your soulmate may suddenly see the pattern. They were waiting for you to approach. You were waiting for them to show they still wanted the connection. Both of you may have been protecting yourselves from rejection, while each secretly hoped the other would make the first move. And now, because of one unexpected meeting last night, that entire pattern may have finally been exposed. Something huge is waiting ahead, because your soulmate may no longer want another person to carry messages between you. They may decide that whatever happens next has to come directly from them. And that means the next conversation may not begin with an explanation about last night at all. It may begin with the words you have been waiting to hear from your soulmate for a very long time. The words may come when you least expect them. I should have talked to you sooner. Your soulmate may finally admit that the entire situation could have been different if they had simply asked you what you felt instead of creating explanations in their own mind. They may tell you about last night, about the person they met, and about the conversation that unexpectedly brought your name into everything. But the most important thing they may reveal is that they are no longer interested in guessing. They want to hear your truth directly. They may ask whether you ever missed them, whether you ever wondered what could have happened between you, and whether some part of you still believes there is something unfinished between you. Don't skip, because the answer to those questions may determine what your soulmate decides to do next. Perhaps you finally tell them something they never expected, that you were waiting to. You may explain that there were moments when you wanted to reach out but stopped yourself because you did not know whether they wanted to hear from you. Maybe you were afraid that your message would be ignored. Maybe you thought they had already chosen another direction. Or maybe you simply became tired of trying to interpret signals that were never clear enough. Your soulmate may listen without interrupting, and for the first time, they may understand how easily two people can care about each other and still become separated by assumptions. They may realize that while they were wondering whether you had moved on, you were wondering whether they had already forgotten you. And that discovery could bring an unexpected sense of relief. Not because every problem has suddenly disappeared, but because both of you finally know the other person was not completely indifferent. Then your soulmate may tell you the truth about the person from last night. They were not meeting that person to begin a new romantic story. They were trying to understand an old one. They needed information, clarity, and perhaps closure around something that had remained unresolved. And somewhere inside that conversation, your name became impossible to ignore. Your soulmate may admit that hearing your name changed the reason they were there. They arrived looking for one answer and left with an entirely different question. What if I have been misunderstanding the person I love this entire time? Something huge is waiting ahead, because that question may finally push your soulmate to make a choice. Not a rushed decision, not a dramatic promise, but a real choice to stop allowing assumptions to speak for them. Stay till the end, because what they decide to do after that realization may be the moment that changes the entire direction of your connection. The decision may come quietly, but it could carry more weight than anything your soulmate said before. After everything they heard last night, they may decide that they are done letting other people, old misunderstandings, or unanswered questions define what exists between you. They may tell you that they cannot change what happened in the past, but they can finally be honest about the present. They may explain exactly who they were with, why they met that person, and why your name became part of the conversation. And then they may look at you and say something that sounds simple but carries everything they have been unable to express. I want to hear your side. That sentence may be the real turning point. Your soulmate is no longer trying to guess your feelings. They are giving you the space to speak. They are finally choosing communication over assumptions. Don't skip, because what you tell them next could determine whether this unexpected meeting becomes the beginning of a completely different chapter. Perhaps you tell them that you never wanted secrets between you. You simply did not know whether they were ready to hear what you truly felt. And perhaps your soulmate finally understands that both of you were protecting yourselves in different ways. They may have been protecting their heart by staying silent. You may have been protecting yours by refusing to chase an answer. Neither person necessarily intended to create distance, yet distance happened anyway. Last night may have forced your soulmate to see that clearly. They may tell you that being seen with someone else was never the real story. The real story was that they were trying to understand something they had carried for too long, and unexpectedly discovered that you were still at the center of it. That realization may bring a completely different energy to the conversation. Instead of suspicion, there is honesty. Instead of guessing, there are questions. Instead of relying on someone else's version of events, you finally have the opportunity to hear each other directly. And then comes the moment that could make everything feel strangely simple. Your soulmate may say, "I don't want another person explaining us to either of us." Those words could reveal the biggest lesson hidden inside last night's mystery. Whatever happens between you should come from the two people actually living the story. Not from rumors. Not from assumptions. Not from incomplete conversations. Your soulmate may not know exactly where the relationship will go, and neither should pretend that one emotional conversation guarantees a particular future. But they may know one thing now: they do not want silence making decisions for them anymore. Something huge is waiting ahead, because the person your soulmate was with last night may have unknowingly started a conversation that your soulmate now wants to finish with you. And the next time you see them, you may notice something completely different: not secrecy, not confusion, but the unmistakable willingness to finally tell you everything they were too hesitant to say before. The truth about last night may finally become much simpler than the story everyone imagined. Your soulmate was with someone, yes, but the person beside them was not the center of their heart. The real center of that conversation was you. They may have gone there expecting an ordinary discussion and ended up hearing your name, your perspective, and details about your connection that they had never known. What began as a meeting with another person became a moment of realization. Your soulmate may have walked into that conversation carrying one set of assumptions and walked away questioning almost all of them. And perhaps that is why they seemed different afterward. They were not trying to hide a new connection. They were processing an old one, the connection they still had with you. Don't skip, because the final piece is not about who stood beside your soulmate last night. It is about what your soulmate chooses to do now that they finally understand what was missing. They may eventually tell you everything without making you chase the truth. They may explain who they met, what was discussed, why your name came up, and which part of the conversation made them realize they had misunderstood you. But then they may go even further. They may admit that they should have spoken to you directly much earlier. They may tell you that they spent too much time interpreting silence, reading into small details, and waiting for signs instead of simply asking the person who mattered most. And perhaps you realize that the mystery was never really about another person. It was about two people who cared enough to wonder, but not enough to feel certain they were safe to speak. Last night may have broken that pattern. Not through a dramatic event, but through one unexpected conversation that finally forced your soulmate to face the question they had avoided: what if I still have a chance to make things right? And now the story reaches the part that matters most. Your soulmate may stand in front of you and say, "I don't want you to hear anything about me from someone else again. If you want to know something, ask me. And if I want you to know something, I'll tell you." That promise may be more meaningful than any dramatic declaration because it creates a foundation of direct communication. Whatever happens next should be chosen by both of you freely and honestly. Maybe this becomes the beginning of a renewed connection. Maybe it becomes a conversation that finally gives you both peace and clarity. The future cannot be guaranteed by a mysterious night or a single revelation. But something important has already changed. Your soulmate now knows that assumptions cannot replace communication. So when you remember the question, who were they with, remember that the answer was only the beginning. The real revelation was why they were there, why your name entered that conversation, and why they came away wanting to speak directly to you. Sometimes one unexpected night does not reveal another love story, it reveals the truth about the connection that was already waiting to be understood.